Knuckleheads, welcome one, welcome all to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. This is Fighters Rep, and I'm your host of Fighters Rep, Fez. This is our post-fight show regarding that Fatal Fury card that just went down in Times Square, New York. A very strange, very interesting show with obviously the big headliners being Teofimo Lopez versus Arnold Barboza, Ryan Garcia versus Romero, and Devin Haney versus Jose Ramirez. Some of this stuff kind of went the way you would expect it to go. And some of this stuff went completely opposite of what you would expect it to go. I got to say, I made a prediction, or I made predictions for this card, and I only got 1 out of 3 right. So that's how you know you got a good, close card. I mean, I'll be honest, I really expected the A sides to come through in this card. When I'm talking about the A sides, I'm talking about Ryan Garcia. I'm talking about Devin Haney. And not Teofimo Lopez. I actually did not like the way he looked the last time he fought. I thought Barboza was going to be a bit too much for him, but he really proved me wrong. So, let's start there, right? Teofimo Lopez, just in his last couple performances, just didn't look good to me. And there were a lot of questions swirling around in the world of boxing as to whether this kid, Teofimo Lopez, was ever going to get back to form. I wasn't sure. I knew he was capable. And I said in my prediction that I felt that, obviously if he's firing on all cylinders, this is a fight he should win. But I just felt like Barboza had worked too hard, had done too much, had looked better lately, especially against Jack Catterall versus Teofimo Lopez. His last fight against Steve Claggett, he didn't look good at all there. And so I really thought Barboza had the chance of winning this fight. And my goodness, was I wrong. Home court advantage for Teofimo Lopez in New York, I think really spurred him on. And I think, him just kind of being himself, being wacky, being goofy, maybe that's his personality. I think he's finally found his identity a bit. I think that helps too. And just, I don't know, maybe better preparation. I mean, just looked like a completely different fighter. Looked like a Teofimo Lopez that was firing on all cylinders, finally. I mean, where's this Teofimo Lopez been? We've been looking for this guy for quite a while, and here he is. So, he used his movement, he used his athleticism, he used his superior boxing, and he beat the bigger guy in Arnold Barboza. I mean, one thing that really stood out for me, I'm not sure if you guys noticed this, in the face-off, was that Barboza was significantly bigger than Lopez, right? And he looked very comfortable. He looked very happy to be there. And I really thought Barboza was going to do it. But Teofimo comes through with a unanimous decision. Pretty dominant, if I'm being honest. And Teofimo Lopez is back. The takeover has returned. Will he stay? That remains to be seen. He's been very inconsistent, but I look forward to seeing what he looks like in his next fight. And that's kind of, all I got to say about that fight. I thought Teofimo Lopez was impressive. Barboza takes his first loss, but I guess there's no shame in losing to a Teofimo that's firing on all cylinders, right? So look forward to seeing what's next for both guys. Now, let's move on to the boringest fight, I got to say, of the evening, which was Devin Haney versus Jose Ramirez. Now, here's one where I got the winner right, but I got the means of winning completely wrong, right? I thought Devin Haney was going to go out there at this bigger weight class and use his power against the guy in Jose Ramirez who's well past his best. And I thought he was going to maybe bang him out of there, kind of like the punishing performance we saw against Regis Prograis when Devin almost got Prograis out of there. But, I also said in my prediction, this is an interesting card because we're all going to, be waiting to see what Devin Haney looks like and what Ryan Garcia looks like subsequent to the big controversy that they had, which obviously took a toll, I think, on everybody's mental side, on their physical side. And, I think what you saw in Devin Haney in this fight was a return to extreme caution. That's what we had here. It wasn't at all like the Ryan Garcia fight where he was trying to fight fire with fire. He was being cautious. He was using his boxing. He wanted nothing to do at all with any sort of back and forth. Did Devin Haney. He just wanted to simply and easily cruise to a dominant boxing decision. And listen, if you have the capability of doing that, go ahead and do that. It's just not going to win you many fans. And, I think a lot of people were left frustrated watching that fight. The commentary crew was very unimpressed, including Antonio Tarver, the Magic Man. And, it just wasn't an entertaining fight. I mean, it could have been an entertaining fight because we know Jose Ramirez likes to go to war, but essentially that was his only chance of winning the fight is if Devin Haney would have obliged him in that kind of fight. And luckily, Devin Haney was smarter than that, luckily for Devin Haney, but not luckily for the fight fans who watched that fight. I don't think people are going to watch that fight and are going to be clamoring for a Haney fight, especially a Haney versus Garcia fight after what we just saw. But I do think it would be interesting, a fight between Devin Haney and Rolly Romero, right? So before we get into Garcia Romero, let me remind you guys, subscribe to the channel, join the channel. Anything you guys spend here, we'll continue to use to build the channel. And I did want to shout out one fighter, Dimitri Lyman, a FightersRep fighter, a guy who fought for us a couple times when we were still putting fights together. He actually just is about to make his pro debut for Glory Kickboxing. So I'm very proud of the kid, having pretty much fought for us. We were the only amateur promotion he fought for outside of a tournament, I believe, in Arizona. So shout out to him, made it to Glory, and I'm excited for him. Join the channel, subscribe to the channel, help me continue to grow this channel, help us become a boxing fraternity where we get together and always, talk about sports and have each other's back and create a great boxing fraternity and community. So I was mentioning Devin Haney versus Rolly Romero because, that may be something to look at in the future after that Romero versus Ryan Garcia fight, which really kind of blew me away, if I'm being honest with you guys. I mean, I did not expect in any way for Rolly Romero to do that to Ryan Garcia. I said in my prediction again, and I even said this about Devin Haney, it's going to be interesting to see where he's at mentally and physically after everything they went through, Ryan Garcia. And I thought Ryan Garcia was even more interesting because, he had the whole substance abuse stuff going on, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is that, he may or may not have been on leading up to that Devin Haney fight. And we wanted to see what he looked like coming back. And what was crazy to me was that Devin Haney and his father, Bill Haney, in the lead up at the press conference were saying that Ryan Garcia looked like a fraction and was a fraction of the Ryan Garcia that fought Devin Haney. They were making all kinds of jokes and insinuations about him no longer being on Osterine and this and that. And I got to say, Devin Haney definitely got the last laugh tonight as Rolly Romero, knuckleheads, went out there. And by the way, completely jacked, built like a Marvel superhero at 147 pounds, and dominated the fight against Ryan Garcia, knocking him down, I believe, in the second round, and then just kind of not letting up, standing right there in Ryan Garcia's face as nothing came back at him. I think Ryan Garcia was just respecting the size and the power of Rolly Romero too much and was just too out of practice, was just not active enough to beat a guy like Rolly Romero. He just didn't have enough activity recently, and he just didn't look good. He looked stale. He looked like he was just frozen. I mean, he couldn't do anything with Rolly Romero, and this was a huge shock. I mean, I heard that he was a plus 700 underdog, was Rolly Romero. I mean, so this is a massive, massive upset. I'm very happy, if I'm being honest, for Rolly Romero because he did deserve, based on his hard work, which, is apparent from his performance tonight, he does deserve a big win like that. And maybe Ryan Garcia deserves a loss like that. Because I'll be honest with you guys, knuckleheads, this is an unpopular opinion in boxing circles, but I've been saying this ever since the beginning of this entire Austrian debacle. And whether you think he took it or he didn't take it or he was cheating or he didn't, there was Austrian in his system. And so for me, right, personally, having seen that there's Austrian in his system, I actually did think he was cheating. And it doubled my suspicion that the guy was cheating. When leading up to the Devin Haney fight, he couldn't make weight. And when I read up on Austrian to see what it's for you to basically lose weight and maintain muscle. So it made sense to me, just putting the clues together, that, Ryan Garcia was, I thought, cheating. And so he goes out there, right? And listen, I could be wrong. This is just what I think, right? We're all entitled to our opinion. And he goes out there, and at the press conference, he's, shouting back and forth with Devin Haney. As you guys remember, before in their fight, he was acting like he was, drinking beer on the scale and doing all these things for attention, doing all these negative things, saying all these negative things for attention. At the end of the day, knuckleheads, if Ryan Garcia did cheat, which I'm not sure, but I think he did, I mean, how unfair and nasty is it, right, if he did cheat? To be talking that way to Bill Haney, to be talking that way about Devin Haney, a kid who is dedicated to his craft, dedicated to the sport, came in clean, came in on weight. I mean, the fact that the great majority of the boxing community took Ryan Garcia's fight in that situation, I'll be honest with you guys, as a person with a moral compass, grossed me out. It grossed me out. And to see what happened today, I feel like the universe set things right, if I'm being honest. Now, I'm not saying I wish Ryan Garcia any ill will. I hope for his recovery. I want to see him come back and be at his best, which tonight was definitely not his best, but it does feel like a little bit of karma in the air, maybe a lot of bit of karma in the air. And Ryan Garcia will be very lucky to get the rematch with Devin Haney after a performance like that. And Ryan Garcia will not beat Devin Haney looking like that. There's no way Ryan Garcia will beat Devin Haney looking the way he looked tonight, which was absolute crap, if I'm being honest with you guys. Again, no ill will against Ryan Garcia. I just don't appreciate the comments made towards Devin Haney. I don't appreciate him having Austrian in his system, especially if he knew about it, which he claims he doesn't. But I don't really believe, but, I don't appreciate it. I believe this is a sport where you need to be clean or you could kill somebody, right? And as a former fight promoter, having seen the way these guys cut weight and what they go through and everything else they put themselves through and the condition they're in when they step in on fight night sometimes because they had too much of a weight cut, I think being faced with somebody who's not on an even playing field is very scary. So those are my thoughts right now on these three fights. If you guys want to drop any comments, any questions, any suggestions in the live chat, feel free to do so. But I really think, this card was a little bit underwhelming, if I'm being honest with you guys. It ended up not even coming close to living up to the hype, if I'm being honest with you guys. And what really kind of took me by surprise was the fact that, I was comparing it with the card last week in the UK where we had Conor Benn take on Chris Eubank Jr. And on that card, there was just one big fight, right? Eubank versus Benn. And the lead up to that fight was years in the making. There was a lot of controversy. There was even, pedigree and family legacy on the line. And, similar kind of to what was going on with Garcia. But, you would have imagined this card here in the United States, right, to be way bigger considering the fights on the card, right? Considering the names, Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia, Rolly Romero, Arlo Barboza, not a huge name, but Teofimo's there, Devin Haney, Jose Ramirez, these are big names. And in my opinion, this event was absolutely nowhere near what we saw in the UK for Ben versus Eubank. I mean, that fight and that whole event, even though it was just one main fight, excuse me, knuckleheads, and not a multiple kind of levels of marquee names, even though that was one big fight, it was so much more of an event. It was so much greater than the card we just had in Times Square. And I'm not blaming it on a Friday night versus a Saturday night. I'm blaming it on the population. I'm blaming it on the UK being the best fight fans in the world, potentially, along with Mexico, if you ask me, the UK and Mexico side by side. And on the US just being way too saturated with fights, boxing, bare knuckle, UFC, you name it. There's a fight every weekend, and it just doesn't seem like the American public is as engaged with fighting and as engaged with boxing, especially as they are out there in the UK. I mean, the UK, you're talking about a population that's nowhere near the size of the United States. I mean, maybe 1/5, I think, the last time I checked. For them to have a turnout like they had for Eubank versus Ben is a testament to the amazing fans they have there, out there in the UK and the environments. And it makes you realize, why a lot of American fighters, I think of guys like Regis Prograis and Terrence Crawford, why they love to go out there and fight, because I think it's just a different environment. It's a different attitude, and it's just a completely different culture. And it's a wonderful culture for boxing. So I'm going to leave it at that, knuckleheads. Decent card, but very underwhelming considering the names we had on this card. Considering they did this in Times Square and they had all kinds of creative, wrinkles with Ryan Garcia coming in a Batmobile and Teofimo Lopez stepping out of a New York taxi cab and the whole Fatal Fury thing and it being right in the middle of Times Square. A little bit underwhelming. But you're not going to hit a home run every time the way Eubank versus Ben did out there in the UK. Knuckleheads, tell me what you think in the comment section below. After you do so, subscribe to the channel, join the channel, get you some merch in the links below. I really look forward to hearing what all of you guys have to say about these fights. Tell me what you thought about these fights. If you agree, disagree, whatever it is, let's argue about it.